Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Ethics Experts. I'm Gio Gallo. We got co-host Nick Gallo here. And if you are a subscriber to the Ethics Experts, then welcome. The way you work and the way you live is a blessing to everybody around you, and it warms my heart. And that's what you get if you subscribe to the Ethics Experts. Smash that subscribe button, because if you're a subscriber, every single episode you get an extra and a special and an extra special welcome to the show. So we are excited to be hanging out today with Sarah Couture, Principal of Couture Compliance. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Super excited to spend some time with you all.
So let's just jump right into it. How are you feeling today, Nick? You ready for a great show?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm stocked with coffee. We're ready to go.
Oh, great. All right. This should be great. Okay, Sarah. So Sarah, let's start with an easy one. What does Couture Compliance cover?
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Couture Compliance is a boutique compliance consulting firm serving the healthcare provider group of healthcare organizations. So hospitals, health systems, physician specialty groups, rehab, anyone who's providing services and billing for them would be clients that typically I would service. We do a lot of proactive and reactive compliance. So on the proactive side, compliance program development, like for startups or smaller organizations that don't yet have a compliance program effectiveness assessments, because as you all know, effectiveness is the standard. If your compliance program is effective at preventing and detecting fraud, waste, and abuse, you can mitigate your ultimate culpability. So it's a really good idea to have someone from the outside take a peek at your program and make recommendations. Also, compliance program implementation. I love fractional and interim support. I have done that multiple times, and being able to step in those times of transition or times where there are not sufficient numbers of staff to do what needs to be done. I love jumping in and helping out. And then reactive matters, billing and coding audits or investigations. Also work with a wide variety of individuals in the healthcare consulting community to help with risk-specific items, clinical research billing, HIPAA privacy. I work with great billing and coding auditors with decades of expertise. So really, I like to say anything that a healthcare compliance program needs, me and my team can help with.
Awesome.
So
thanks for asking.
When you were
Sure.
starting this business, what was the impetus behind it? What gap in the market were you trying to fill? And why does that gap exist?
Yeah, that's a great question. Healthcare compliance is already very niche. Like when people ask me what I do, like even if I tell them in detail, they don't really understand, right? Like the normal people out there, we're
Right.
kind of all unicorns. So I think there's a spot for individuals who really understand what compliance is. Some consultants have only worked as consultants. The folks that I know who are compliance consultants, including myself, I've worked in both in-house compliance roles as well as consulting roles. So I think that is a big differentiator. The spot I saw in the market, Nick, is really in that proactive space, including the interim and fractional space. There are a lot of great consulting firms out there that help people in times of concern, when there's some kind of government investigation, when there's a problem. Certainly I can help with those things as well. But I think bigger consulting firms tend to be, those are higher price point projects. But the projects that I really enjoy are the proactive, and there's not huge margins for them. So I think that there's a spot in the market because the big consulting firms don't necessarily want to waste time or waste resources. I want to be careful how I say that, obviously. But proactive things like compliance program effectiveness assessments or helping with a program build or interim and fractional staffing, like hospitals and health systems can't pay, tens of thousands of dollars for these sorts of things. So I'm able to come in at a price point that is both pragmatic, but also bring expertise of not just myself, but a lot of other great experts. And also, I don't know a ton of people out there who want to do interim and fractional staffing. So I think that's a unique spot in the market. It can be very challenging to find an interim chief compliance officer or just to find extra help when you can't find the right staff person. So I do think that's a great spot in the market and something I really enjoy.
So what were you doing before this?
So I'm a nurse by background. I've been a nurse since 2001, and I was in a variety of practice settings. The most recent job that I had as a nurse, I was the clinical coordinator of 2 locations of a church-funded free clinic in Kentucky. And on our board of directors was the chief compliance officer for the local academic medical center. So became friends with him through that experience. And there's some interesting stories. Accidentally fell into compliance. Like I didn't know what it was. I like to joke, and you may have read this I had an interview with HCCA when they were still in print. I got to be the cover model. Now that they're not in print, like I'm glad I already had my chance to open my mailbox and see myself there.
Right.
But I joke, my very first day, they said, "You're going to help us with the OIG work plan." And I said, "What's the OIG?" So that was my first question of compliance. I have figured it out.
You got that figured out what that acronym was?
Yeah, I figured it out.
Good,
Yep.
good.
And I've learned quite a few other acronyms, right, in the meantime. So fell into compliance. I went in as a temp, honestly. And within a few weeks, my boss was like, "Oh my gosh, Sarah, you have found your thing." He had never had someone with a clinical background in the compliance office. So the rapport that I instantly had with the nursing director of the emergency department or these different areas. I wasn't just someone from the ivory tower. My badge said RN. I had done the work. I had been in the trenches. And also the perspective that I brought to a lot of things. It's probably my favorite thing about compliance. There is no like, oh, this is what a compliance officer background is, right? Because we come from clinical, we come from operations, we come from auditing, we come from legal. Like there is no mold. And that makes our profession so rich. I can't think of another profession quite like that, honestly, where we actually need all of these different disciplines to come together and make this beautiful profession that we see.
Yeah, and there's no one background where, well, yes, you could do it with all of those, but, pick one. And if you're an auditor, then that's the way to be the best compliance officer and compliance person. Everyone comes at this with a bouquet of different backgrounds, and we learn to be effective, right? And there are things that you have to pick up on, and there's things we learn from each other. There's not one correct path to build it, which I think is really cool.
It's almost like, I love the word that you said, bouquet. Like from the bouquet of the backgrounds that like are people who would be drawn to this, it's almost like, one of these 7 or 8 or 10 backgrounds plus your personality type and strength profile equals the right kind of compliance officer, right? And like those mixes are so unique. But really, I mean, that's my favorite thing about the profession. And that's probably something that you all really get to appreciate and enjoy because you interact with so many folks with different personalities, different strengths, different backgrounds, yet are excellent in compliance roles.
What have you noticed as the through line across all those different types, this richness, this diversity of background and experience and blah, 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 that can still make a great compliance officer or practitioner? But have you noticed any commonality?
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't thought about the answers. I'm going to think here on my toes while everybody's watching me on your YouTube channel. I think a big one is heart.
Yep.
Like if you don't have heart, you could be very rules oriented, right? Because it's a bunch of rules, but like nobody ever followed rules because they were black and white checklists, right? Like they are more likely to follow rules if they understand why, if they know how it's protecting patients, if they know how it's, protecting their mom who's coming in to get surgery or whatever it may be. You also don't engage people without heart. Got to have a good personality. You can't be someone who's just laying down the hammer. I mean, I think sometimes people try that, and I don't think those are the successful compliance professionals, right? They don't last very long in their jobs. So maybe it's heart.
Why do you think they don't last long in those jobs when they're just wielding a hammer like that?
Because I don't mean respect. And I don't think you can truly be effective if you're just trying to do the checklist of the things, if you're just trying to develop the policies and you're just trying to make sure you have appropriate paper, like the paper program, a paper program doesn't work. We know that. That paper has to have legs and arms and be able to operate appropriately in the organization's culture to really be effective. So I don't think you can just be a hammer throwing person and be effective.
Right. So you were kind of this temp, you're asking what the OIG is, but there was something about that experience that seems like you were like, I love, I slipped off this log and I like kind of swimming in this pool. What was it about it that was so resonant with you?
I have since, my kids make fun of me because I like personality tests and these things. StrengthsFinder, if you have not done it, and if your listeners have not, go to Amazon and buy the book, and it has a code where you can take the test. It is absolutely fascinating, based on decades of research by this gentleman who looked at business strengths. So far after I fell off the log and liked the pond, I did the StrengthsFinder test, and mine are achiever, strategy, communication, competition was one of them, which actually surprised me, and winning others over. Woo, those are my 5. So it's like the right blend. I love getting things done. Like, I'm someone who on a Saturday, like, yes, I do want to rest, but I also need to get some things done for me to feel like I had a good day. So the combination of being strategic and getting things done and communicating and collaborating well with others, like,
and winning people over is huge.
Yes. So like, I think that's why, again, I didn't do the test for like 10 years after that, but like, looking back, that's why it was a great fit. Add to that my clinical background. So I knew how to navigate the healthcare system. I knew the language. I knew the things that were going on. Literally, when I was still a temp, like in my first couple weeks, one of the guys in the revenue cycle, and I had so much fun with them. They were fascinating and fun people. You wouldn't think there'd be so much comedy in the revenue cycle, but there really can be. They were impressed that I actually like took the things they said and did something with them. They said, we're used to compliance people just coming in here with notebooks and taking tons of notes, and then we never hear from them again. So, it was just the right blend. And, most people that I talk to, when they accidentally fall into compliance, it's the same. It like clicks with them, and all right, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Me and Gio didn't like grow up in compliance. We grew up in finance and private equity and stuff. And it's such an interesting space because there's like so many aspects that can resonate, like you said, it takes a kind of, or like Gio said, it takes this sort of bouquet of skills, and they're not really one-dimensional skills. They're multidimensional skills, and they're human, and it's persuasion, and it's strategy, and it's, all these different things. It's really easy to find something to gravitate toward or to really kind of hold on to. And what I've kind of gravitated toward is something that you've brought up, is that like, this is a human thing. Nobody has to do any of these rules, right? Like, but if we can get people aligned and we can get them focused on something, and we can give them the why behind the what, as you were saying, then the odds of their quote unquote compliance is a lot higher. And the nature of the compliance is a lot more, it's a lot less kind of like words of the law. It's more spirit of the law. It's more like, I'm not just trying to, check a box to use use that idiom or whatever it is. But it's more about like trying to get it done right because it fits into this broader thing. It's not it's not an extra, it's not like a flat tire. It's a spoiler on the car. If we can get these people, actualized. And what I've found, and, you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, is that, zoom out. We have like this regulatory load that we have to like account for, right? We have to make sure that our organization is de-risked to the extent possible.
And an ever-changing, enormous regulatory load. Let's add that.
It's always moving, and there's not enough guidance, and there's new guidance and whatever. And then we have the lived employee experience. And like, if these don't marry up, then you're going to be you're going to acclimate to one side or the other, and it's going to be kind of an incomplete program or it's going to be hard to demonstrate effectiveness, to kind of boil it down to that. And I've just found that in our space, we tend to acclimate more toward like the words on the paper versus the human beings. And like, to me, it's just all about persuasion. We have to get in front of people. We have to be advertisers. We have to be marketers. We have to be salespeople, right? We have to build this kind of trust. We have to be consultants. These are the kinds of interactions we have to have if the attachment to our department or to our policies is going to be authentic,
Totally. So interesting that you mentioned like the warm side. So when I was coming up with my branding, I worked with a great marketing company in Louisville that helps small businesses. But like my branding and my logo for Couture Compliance, I said, I don't want cold colors.
Yeah.
Because I think that people associate compliance with cold colors, like
Interesting.
navy blue or a steel blue or like a gray. Like,
Yeah.
and if you look, I mean, there are some other really great compliance consultants that use those colors, right? It's like maybe
Sure.
they're leaning on that side. And like, it's totally true. Like it is really cold. It can be really cold, right?
Totally,
Like jail bars are cold, I imagine, right? But the key to keeping away from the cold is the warm. So I intentionally said, I want warm, orange is my favorite color. I wanted warm colors because compliance has to be engaging. And I want my consulting firm to be engaging and the approach to be engaging. If you all are regular readers of the monthly Healthcare Compliance Association Compliance Today magazine, you will know that I have a monthly column this year on engaging people for compliance
Yes.
program effectiveness. So each month is a different group of stakeholders, board, senior leaders, managers, frontline staff. We're going to talk about vendors. We're going to talk about students because it's all about effectiveness. I mean, effectiveness is also very multidimensional. So I don't want to say this is the only key to effectiveness, right? Like you can be the most engaging person in the world, but if you don't have the right structure, you're not going to have an effective compliance program either.
Sure.
But we can't just rely on structure. We also have to have those social skills, the engagement, the relationship, being that personable, approachable compliance professional that really becomes a resource. Like you don't want to be seen as someone that is at odds with others in your organization. You want to be alongside them. Like, how can I help you succeed? Yeah, there are certain ways we can't do something, but let's talk about the ways we can.
Yeah, it's so important. You need all of that. You need those different pieces. And I think that's part of why people from all these different backgrounds that we've talked about can be effective in this, because to be effective, you need to be able to reach across the aisle and connect with different people, but still build process and, still kind of get the job done when it's really serious and stuff like that. But, I like how you said that this concept of caring and giving a rip and, having a heart is really a through line for what makes people effective. But, you also mentioned how, you walked in and I think it was the billing team said, well, we're used to people just coming in here and taking a bunch of notes and then leaving. There are these memes about compliance officers, which I think pretty broadly people are like aware of, and they don't want to be that, and they're fighting against that. But, like, I love that you're talking about effectiveness and engaging. There are some almost epidemics of reputation in the compliance space. What do you think leads to some of those? Because, anytime I talk to someone in compliance and I'm like, hey, do you like when people think you're the office of no or something? Everyone's like, no, we're trying to not be that and be like cool and relevant and engaging and stuff. But yet it's there. What do you think are some of the things that have led to that? Is it just bad people in compliance?
To your point, you're fighting it from day one, right? Like you cannot be that person, but still everybody thinks you are. So
exactly.
You're fighting a perception from the beginning. Your team is fighting a perception from the beginning. I have, these little quotes that stick out to me from doing, I think I've done more than 50 compliance program effectiveness assessments over the years. And one of my favorites was when someone in operations said, oh, you want me to tell you about compliance? Compliance is the department where good ideas go to die.
Yikes.
Yikes. So interestingly, I talked to a great guy yesterday, actually on a podcast that I'm starting. I was mentioning that to you all before we got started. It's not launched yet. I will let you know. I want to get 15 or 20 of them recorded before I go live.
Oh, that's smart.
My podcast is featuring, it's called Talking Compliance, Stories and Perspectives from Healthcare Compliance Professionals. So I'll let you know when it's out there. Just giving people a way to share their stories because everybody's story is fascinating.
Yeah.
So a gentleman I was speaking with yesterday, his first day of his new role in compliance was January of 2000. Compliance was brand new. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to him about is compare and contrast where we are now in 2024 with where things were in the beginning. And his perspective, he's a very engaging person. He had a lot of great strategic things to say about buy-in and connecting with people. But he said compliance in the beginning was just the rules. It was
Yeah.
very cold. It was very, this is the way things have to be. There were early CIAs where the perspective of those brand new compliance officers, they had a hammer and they used it, right? So like, unfortunately, I think early roots didn't focus so much on that. You have to actually be a nice person to get people to call you if there's a problem, right? It wasn't like that. It was very like rules oriented, and it has evolved. And let's hope it continues to evolve. But like, maybe we need some great companies out there like Ethico to make some new memes, and we can be circulating them. Because
we really should be doing more memes. I'm with you.
More memes. I've never seen any like complimentary meme about compliance. But like the compliance people I know are absolutely amazing, wonderful, gracious, smart rock stars. Yet we know what the memes are.
I just think it's an agency issue at this point. Like the stereotype, perhaps it was established because of the title, just the word, that combination of letters invokes a certain feeling. Perhaps it was, people wielding a hammer. It was the sort of, knee-jerk response to trying to put rules in place and, etch those in stone, fine. But what I have seen recently, and this is another through line, and this is a broad brushstroke because those are the only kind of brushes I have. But like,
it's more of a mop.
It's a mop. I paint with mops. So I find that another through line to the people that exist in our space is kind of a like you said, a heart, a desire to leave things better, to put others first for sure. But there's also this thing of like, well, I'm just going to put my head down and let my work speak for itself. That's kind of a thing I've seen like 1,000 times.
Interesting.
And I can appreciate that, right? But that is, I just don't think it's that effective. Like, I think everybody is like, has their own to-do list. It's hard for people to notice. Like my daughter coming up to me after she gets 100 on her spelling test and showing that to me, that's not like an arrogant thing. You know what I'm saying? Like she wants the credit, she worked hard and she got it. And that's a data point that I might have missed if it wasn't on the fridge or she didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And so we have this stereotype. We have this scarlet letter that we, as soon as we put on the jacket, it's already on there.
Yeah.
Right. We inherit that. And I just think we need to be better marketers. Like to your point, we have to make more connections with people. We have to grab hold of the influence steering wheel, because these are all just opinions and these opinions can change. That guy who said, let me tell you about compliance, it's where ideas go to die. It's not like that is etched in stone in his mind. A couple of interactions, he can say, oh, well, this seems to be different. Or, wow, there's a changing of the guard. Or, wow, I had this pegged wrong. And what I'm trying to get to is that there is a lot, I think a lot of us view this view that folks have of us as like a threat. And I just think it's like a massive opportunity. Like if I have an opinion about somebody, a baseless opinion about somebody, and then I meet them and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was dead wrong. If that's happening inside of my head, there's almost this subconscious desire for me to like balance the scales and not be a hypocrite. So I find myself saying, like, balancing it and be like, oh, this person's great. Oh, this person's phenomenal. Man, I had them pegged so wrong. You know what I'm saying? So like that tension exists to varying degrees, I think, in all human beings. And like, if someone has a wrong view of us, or if they have an antiquated view of our function, and if in fact we are these great people, which I see every single day that you're talking about, that Gio's talking about, well, we just have to like let that out a little bit and like show that spelling test. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and I think, as you're talking, I think a part of it, these really nice people have probably contributed to it, in that we assume our organizations, our boards, our leaders, and our managers know what compliance is and know what we're supposed to be doing. I don't think they do.
Agree.
They really don't. I mean, I have interviewed so many compliance committee members as part of program effectiveness assessments. And I always say, help me understand what your committee does. They can't articulate it. How does your committee talk about compliance risk? They have no idea. Do you understand your role and why you are on that committee? They have no idea.
Yep.
So
and they're on the committee. This is not just some rank and file employee.
Correct. These are like, yes. So like, I think, talking about our campaign, Nick, of like changing the perception, compliance needs to stop assuming everybody understands compliance, because I don't think that Even our boards and leaders and managers do not. So we need to communicate what compliance is, what the compliance program is doing, and what that means for that person, right? Like if it's about engagement, it's not just this is what we are, but this is what you need to know and how we need to interact. So I think that's a big takeaway. And people are busy, right? Like, and compliance officers and compliance professionals have 80 billion fires to put out every single day. These things are like step up to 5,000 feet or 10,000 feet. Look at the big picture and be intentional. But like, we need to do a better job of educating our stakeholders on what in the heck we're doing and why it matters.
Yeah. And I would even say, take it a step further, not just why it matters, but why they should be excited about it.
Totally.
Like we have to connect to what they care about if we're going to get their authentic engagement, because the level of engagement that we get from, individual contributors or frontline employees, it's not like those people are built different than somebody at the board level. Like they're all human beings. They have the same animal spirits and whatever, right? Like agendas and stuff like that. We have to put it in terms where they're like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. Oh my gosh, my voluntary participation is going to actually help me achieve my goal. When we can frame things that way, it doesn't seem like it's something, again, like another thing that they have to carry around. It's something that can lighten their load.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No. In the 2023 Department of Justice updates to evaluation of corporate compliance programs, you guys probably read that on the weekends as well, like I do.
Yeah, right after I finish your column, then I switch to that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I assumed that you all were doing that. Yes, thank you. But I love some of the things they added around incentives, including that participation in compliance should be a means of career advancement. So like, if we have figured out how to engage operational leaders, managers, frontline people, there are compliance champions, our compliance liaisons, or we've helped operations develop like specific tasks that make sense in that risk area, in that department. And then we tie that to like, it doesn't just matter for patients, because I think it does, right? Like compliance matters for patients, but like it actually matters for your career progression. It matters for your long-term longevity at this institution. Like tying it to more than, I need to follow the rules because of whatever, like making it personal.
Well, it's not an end unto itself. It's the beginning of something. It's an input into something else. It's the way you go about doing things, I think. Not to get so like philosophical about it, but it's a way of going through life, Yeah. And there was an interesting, so I love that they have that in the guidance. I just wish more people connected it. Like, I just think when people read that, it feels like a little preachy, like it should progress, it should be a function of career advancement. Like, I think it will be a function of career advancement to the extent that people view that as a valuable step in somebody's career and a valuable skill building thing. And I just fear that like that connection isn't.
Yeah, because okay, so it says it, but how do we do that? Like practically, what do we do in our organizations to like, what opportunities are there for operational folks to be part of compliance initiatives? How do we get credit for that? Is it in their job descriptions? Are we talking about that at performance evaluation time? Like you actually have to like take that sentence and like, okay, let's build something that actually makes us do what this is saying.
Yeah. It's totally spot on. So Michael Duran, who is the chief compliance officer at 3M, he did this wild, it's exactly what we're talking about. He did this really cool study. So they had 2 questions in like their survey that went around. And the first question was, it was like agree or disagree, one of those like scale questions, And it was like, my manager talks about ethics, compliance, value stuff frequently, agree or disagree, right? Like strongly agree, whatever.
Okay.
And then the second question was, my manager is someone that I look up to and want to emulate. My manager is a role model for me. Okay. Listen to this. So if somebody answered strongly agree to the first question, they answered strongly agree to the second question at a rate of 98%. 97 or 98%. If someone answered something less than strongly agree to the first question, my manager talks about ethics, blah, 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 frequently. Frequently, by the way, is like once a month, not even that frequent.
Okay.
If anything less than strongly agree, the second question dropped to below, like, it was like 42% or 45%.
Wow.
That is a wild correlation. Like,
that
is a big one. So I'm just saying that's fodder for us to help organizations make that connection. Like literally, I could argue this, the fastest way to become a better leader is to just talk about ethics more. That's it. because your quality as a leader is kind of in the eyes of the beholders. It's in the, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure. Yep.
sure, there's an objective piece to it, but like it's based in their perception. And the quickest way you can affect that perception is merely echoing what ethics and compliance is saying.
Yeah, and it gets to your longevity and it being part of your career progression, and it gets to employee retention, right?
Exactly.
60 to 85% of people leave a job because their manager, is not someone they respect or trust or whatever. And it ties all of those things together.
Yep. And I've always thought that is fascinating. People think it's about money. It's not about money. It's about work environment and your boss.
Yeah. Yeah, the money's an easy thing to put on a spreadsheet, but compliance is culture.
Yep. Absolutely.
So when you're,
go ahead,
Nick.
No. I got 1,000 questions. So
yeah, I know we can do this all day.
I know it's almost like we should do a podcast.
I know.
We should have a series. Yeah. So we've I want to kind of dig in on your stakeholder piece, because we've talked a little bit about how there's this opportunity to change the perception of compliance, and I think a lot of this is just me postulating, but I think a lot of the gap between actually transforming that perception and kind of staying where we're at is I think there are two big things. One is not realizing how much you can change that and not knowing how to do it. Because I think that if people knew, hey, what a great experience you had, Sarah, for you to walk in so early in your compliance career and see this dissonance between, hey, we thought you'd be like this and you're like this and you guys are vibing and all of that, to, I think color a bunch of the way that you engage this stuff. But I think that if people realized what got you here is not going to get you there. What got you from 0 to compliance 1.0 to maybe, getting into a compliance 2.0 format is not going to be the thing that, well, you just got to do a bunch more policies and you got to read a bunch more regulations and then you're going to get to 3.0. It's going to take engaging stakeholders, which is what your column's all about this year. And I'm loving it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I think that that's such a strong path to change this perception and effectiveness, because we're kind of preaching to the choir when we're talking to our compliance coordinators, right? They're already on board. We need to go get adoption from the mood in the middle and the middle managers and stuff like that. So let's talk about some of the themes that have been going through your column in these different stakeholders, and maybe how engagement of one or a different group maybe needs a different approach.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it starts with just, you can't fix the problem until you can acknowledge you have it. You almost have to just start by being okay, part of my strategy needs to be engaging people. Because I don't know that that's always been on the front minds, right, of people, because we have the guidance and it's so good. I think the new general compliance program guidance is excellent. I don't know did you read my blog on that, Gio? If not, I'll share it with you, because I think you like to read what I write.
I do love it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, every night he said is what
every night. Every
weekend. I mean, let's be honest. Sorry.
But just coming up with an intentional plan, I can almost see there's no right or wrong way. That's the other thing I love about compliance.
Cool.
I should say there's a lot of wrong ways, but there's no right way. There's a lot of right pragmatic ways to do things. But, thinking about these various stakeholder groups, I can almost see a meeting of the minds of the compliance program team. Let's go through these different stakeholder groups and be okay, are we effectively engaging them? Yes or no? And if we say yes, what's our evidence? If we say no, what's our plan? And we could do that really at every spot, each of these stakeholder groups that we talk about this year in the column. Because my guess is some you're engaging more effectively than others, right? Most compliance programs have figured out how to get most of the right information in the right way, I hope, to the board, right? But to your point, Nick, about the frontline folks, we didn't even think about them. And I think a lot of compliance professionals assume that everything you're doing trickles down all the way to the front. I teach at the Compliance Essentials workshops, and one of the sessions is program improvement. And we talk about using surveys as a method to evaluate your own effectiveness and then make a plan for making your program better. But thinking about surveys, I love those two questions. But if you're asking compliance knowledge and perception surveys, you assume, of course, people know there's a compliance officer. Of course, people know there's a hotline. Of course, people would know how to report something. Of course, people feel our discipline is fair and consistent. Of course, people assume their manager is always going to do the right thing.
Yeah. I spend all my time on this. Of course, it's getting.
I spend all my time on this. Exactly. So you see the results and you're oh, okay, well, I need to come up with a different strategy because what I thought was communicating those things and affecting culture is not. So you use the survey to like give you business intelligence to re-strategize and then measure again in a year or two, whatever makes sense. And hopefully your efforts have made an impact. So,
Right.
I mean, I like that idea, Gio, just thinking through the stakeholder groups and being like, all right, are we effectively engaging them? Has it even crossed our mind to engage them, by the way?
Yeah.
And let's come up with a plan.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you're pushing that, and I think it's going to do a lot of good across the industry because I mean, I think even the words that we use to describe it, I think count this out. Like when someone is talking about a compliance program, they may extend it to communication of I need some posters and some emails to announce these things, and I need an email to send out the conflict of interest survey. But I don't think that part of the compliance program is like a branding initiative. Totally. Or a like, how do we get the hearts and minds going on this? Which is hard to do, and I get that it's a lot to ask of like an auditor or someone who grew up in law or something like that. But like again, if we're going to do compliance 3.0, if we're going to do effectiveness and be at the strategic table and all of these things that we want to kind of grow our profession up to in the coming years. It's got to be some other stuff. And I think like you can't stop at your program are like your SOPs.
Agree. I think your program infrastructure is just the foundation.
Yeah, right.
Like, and it's an assumed, like, yeah, it's 2024. You better have that stuff, right? Exactly. Like we've known since 1998 when the hospital guidance came out, what you need to have in place. So like, please tell us 26 years later that like you figured that part out.
Right.
That's just the beginning. It's not the end.
Yeah.
That might be the biggest mindset shift that I think can add the most value to our broad industry. There's so many things that I say that about. Like your risk assessment isn't the end, it's the start of something. Your investigate, your hotline call, that's just the start of something. Like even the investigation engine isn't even the end of something. That's the start of the remediation to ensure, hey, is this a systemic problem or is this, I need to close the loop on it. And I just think there's a lot of power in both flipping that and finding the freedom in what you said, that there's 1,000 different ways to do something. It's really about being able to put yourself into a defensible position, I think, not like defend myself in the court of law, but like, have I put enough thought into this? And can I explain to you, with a balanced rationale on why I made the trade-offs I made to arrive at the thing that I arrived at. And like, again, we can debate this 100 different ways. And like, can you ever really can you ever quantify beauty? Can you ever quantify true effectiveness? Like you can't. It's a thing to strive toward, which is fine and great. And there's freedom in that for sure. But like the fact that word is there doesn't mean like that shouldn't be a paralyzing thing. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of freedom in that to me,
Yep. A few years ago, Debbie Troklis and I wrote an article called Chasing the Goal. And like, it's like the pot at the end of the rainbow. Like you're never going to get there. Like people want in an effectiveness assessment, like, well, is this report going to tell me if I'm effective or not? Nope. Like we're going to say like, you're doing a great job in these things. And here are some areas for opportunity. Like, I hope your program is reasonably effective, but like not a chance in the world am I going to say this program is effective because right? You can't say that. It's like a destination that you always keep heading towards. And there is no end because let's say a program is perfectly effective today. Tomorrow it's already not, right? Because something has changed in your organization. There's been turnover. There's been a regulatory change. And like, you always have to stay on the front edge of that. Your program should always be evolving. It's dynamic. It doesn't ever change. You guys will like the story. I did an effectiveness assessment and the chief compliance officer bragged to us that the thing that they got in trouble for in 1997, they still audit every single year.
Cool. Great.
Oh my gosh, I hope you fixed that in 1997 so that you could spot check it for a while and maybe check in every couple of years. Like, oh my gosh.
What a broken mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we're still making sure that it's
we
good.
Fixed it. We're still making sure it's fixed.
Yeah. We also, our IT team always checks the fax machine. We just want to make sure it's still working.
And to your point, Nick, about your risk assessment, like, okay, this person had done a risk assessment, but didn't translate that to action. So, okay, is that thing that you're still auditing every year? Like, is that on your top 5 or your top 10? No, it's not. oh my gosh, do you think you should point some of your
Reallocate
resources,
focus. Yeah,
reallocate your focus to your high risk issues? And then guess what? Get those addressed, work with operations to fix those so that you can continually be, shifting down on your risk assessment, the highest issues, because we've looked at it. It's mitigated. We're going to spot check it, but like we can move on.
Right. Well, we got to head toward wrapping up, but this has been a blast. We should do a special 7-hour session with
Oh my
Sarah
gosh.
and just
a
cover all of
walking
this stuff.
session. Yeah, with
Yeah.
GoPros or something.
Could we do it like in some kind of destination? Like,
Yes.
where could we travel to?
Yeah, compliance from Bali. How about that? Ethics Experts Bali edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in.
All right, we'll work on it. Well, it's been great. Anything you want to leave us with before we wrap up? We've covered so much stuff, but anything you want to say before we wrap, Sarah?
No, I really just appreciate getting the chance to have fun with you guys. Like, it has been fun because compliance is fun and compliance people are fun. We've talked about that enough. But thanks for the opportunity just to share the new things that I'm doing at Couture Compliance. It's couturecompliance.co, not .com, because, let's be a little bit different. Would love to connect with people if they, just to connect with people, because that's the other thing. We didn't talk about that, but like, that's a thing we need in compliance, each other. But if anyone needs, some kind of compliance program support, would love to have a conversation. But just thanks for letting me come on and hang out with you guys. And yeah, for real, when we go to Disney or Bali or wherever that may be, count me in.
Very good. See you next time.
This has been the Ethics Experts. See you next time, guys.